Cornelius and I go back a couple years. He's been working with us as a super talented UX UI designer at the Alchemy Agency. What I didn't know is that he was moonlighting as a celebrity, an internet celebrity with over 600,000 followers on Instagram and 250,000 YouTube subscribers.
Let's learn how to sew a collarless collar. Let's learn how to make these pleats with a fork. Have I mentioned I grew up in a Mennonite community? That's little Cornelius right there.
He has a really inspiring story and a loyal following.
When I was 3 years old, this machine fell on top of me. And as a result of that accident, this is what my body looks like today.
He turned that into lemonade by creating his own clothing from scratch, filming the process and teaching others how to do it on his social media channels.
What's this dentist tool used for? Just kidding. It's actually a sewing tool.
I'm excited to talk to you because we've worked together for a while now. And for the first, 6 months to a year of working with you on projects for web design, UX, UI, I wasn't aware that you had this secret identity as like a massive clothing designer, creator, influencer. And your personal story that you share is also really interesting and moving too. So A, thanks for joining. And B, would you share that story with us here?
Well, thank you for allowing me to participate in this. It's always fun to be able to talk to people about it. In terms of my story, it starts as a little boy, 3-year-old Cornelius, growing up on a farm and involved in a farm accident where this big old piece of machinery fell on top of me and pinched some nerves in the back of my spine. And as a result of that, various muscles on my body didn't develop. They atrophied essentially because there's a lack of communication there. And so I've been very conscious of my appearance growing up, and also like to make things. So I was being on a farm, of course, you make stuff. And naturally that kind of led to me realizing, why don't I also just make the clothes that I wear? And that was largely inspired because of the asymmetry that my body has. I thought to myself that I don't have to actually make things exactly the same on both sides. And so I tailor my clothes to be slimmer on the right side than they are on the left side, and adjust the heights of my shoulders slightly because they vary. And so tweak those little things so that clothes that I make only fit me. Other people have tried them on sometimes, and it's like, hold on, this feels a little odd. I'm like, yeah, that's intentional. It's meant to be slimmer. So there's that component. And then the other side of it was, I've always enjoyed performing as well. I did plays, a little bit of local theater growing up and things. And it just so happens that I've living in the perfect time in history where social media was invented, and we're no longer dependent on gatekeepers, if you will, or people in charge of the channels and platforms. So I combined the two. So I just started putting out content based on the stuff that I was making. And it's been a thing that I've just been slowly working on, kind of figuring out how to best do it. And now we find ourselves here where this is now my primary gig, and the design stuff is just for the clients that I like still. So.
Well, thanks for continuing to do design for us then. I didn't realize that. That's an honor. I appreciate it. The story that you have of inventing your own clothes to fit your specific body type, it's interesting because I didn't even realize that. Like I knew your story, and I knew that you also made clothing, but I didn't realize that was why, which is amazing. And also, it's interesting that isn't more prominent, maybe, or like, that wasn't a goal of yours necessarily, to like build this thing that was making clothes for other people that might also have similar challenges, where that almost becomes its own sort of mission on itself. For you, it was more about just making the clothes and showing the process and helping people learn how to do it.
Yeah, it was initially just about learning how to do it. I was in the very beginning, I was just documenting me learning how to sew. So those early ones are just me bumbling along, having absolutely no clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And slowly over time, I've kind of figured out the craft. And I never planned on it, but it's become a thing of sort of the educational side of things. I was very surprised to discover the stuff that people actually latched onto was when I shared the technical aspects behind the scenes of how to make your own clothes. Everything from making the basic patterns to the technical aspects of the sewing and those sorts of things. Like the first video that launched things for me was I did this video about the shape of a sleeve, specifically the top curve of a sleeve. Because most people, when they learn how to sew, it's this sort of S-shaped curve, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you look at it as a flat item. So in the video, very simple. All I did was just take it, I curled it up into a circle, and you see that weird S shape transform just into a tube that's been cut at an angle.
Mm.
And then I unwrapped it again, and you realize, like, oh, right, a sleeve is just a tube cut at an angle so that it attaches to the side of the body. And it's that simple, but when you first start sewing, all you see is that weird curve and you don't get it. You're like, okay, I mean, I guess I sew this. I don't know why. And so then that unlocked things for me where I was like, oh, right. It's interesting information that people want to know, because we all wear clothes. Clothes are such a large part of our identity. I mean, we communicate with whatever clothes we put on. Whether we're thinking about it or not, we're saying something. And so there's sort of that tie-in of the making of it versus we all have it. And so from there on in, I've sort of gone on more of an educational route, where now the primary focus of what I do is, I would call it education. My tagline is, I teach you how to make your clothes.
As a result of that's what was performing better, or like did it just sort of click in that moment where it's like, okay, this is something I want to do and people like it, like this is a good lens?
It's hard to say, because I was kind of doing some educational stuff before that, but that was the one video that clicked and kind of launched the audience that I have today.
Let's talk about fashion itself, because what you had just said about clothing, I don't remember exactly what you said about sort of this idea of clothing and your identity and the message that you're sending. Your style is very like cowboy aesthetic. Where does that come from? Is that from living on the farm, or that's just what you're into? And maybe expand on that idea of like, what does that mean to you, like clothing as an identity?
Yeah, I think whether like we think about the clothes, like if we curate what we put on in the mornings, it says that we are very paying attention to the nuances. If we just throw on something, it also just says that I don't care about, or I'm not caught up in the appearance. Either way, there's sort of a message. It's a choice is being made. In terms of my personal appearance, I grew up in a Mennonite community. I was born in a Mennonite community in Paraguay. And they're all farmers, and my parents are from Mexico, so all the Mennonites that moved there started wearing cowboy hats. They took it with them when they moved to Paraguay. So all the men growing up wore them, but it was like a thing that the men wore. It wasn't for the boys, you know?
Sure.
But I always thought they were so cool as a result of it. And I was looking forward to the day when I was grown that I could get a hat too. And I eventually left the community, forgot about it, and then realized like, well, hold on. No, I can still do that. I don't have to. I can combine styles, right? Like I don't have to go full Mennonite just to wear the hat. I can have my clean cut, button up sort of aesthetic with a cowboy hat. And so now, I don't know, it felt right the first time I bought one, put it on. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. This hits the spot. And
it's cool. Like
ever since.
Your whole existence is kind of like alchemizing your past into like something kind of awesome right now. You know, like,
oh yeah. So right? Much of, if I pull on enough threads, if you will, pardon the pun, it all goes back to my youth. to when I was a child. And so I'm just pulling these sort of different inspirations and recrafting my identity, if you will, around those items. There was a part of me that in my sort of teens and early 20s kind of wanted to put that aside and distance myself from it. And interestingly, it was also the same time I really struggled with my personal identity because of my body, because of the accident. I was very self-conscious. Ever since I was a little boy, I was like ashamed of myself and my body as a result of that accident. Wore exclusively long sleeves and things like that to try and hide it. And then as I sort of continued living life into my later 20s and now my 30s, I learned how to embrace that aspect of me and the uniqueness that brings of having had that accident. And it's entirely informed me as a person. And as a result of embracing this part of my body and the way it is, it also ended up me broadening out further and then just pulling in other aspects of my childhood and youth as well and reincorporating them.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the teens are so hard for anyone, let alone if you're recovering from a serious accident like that. So was it through fashion and building this stuff? Like when you said it affected your maybe self-esteem, when did that start to turn? Like, where did you find your power to work through that?
When I realized, so I dated a lot in my late 20s. I was sort of making up for lost time when I didn't, for fear of my visual image. And so I just started getting out there more. And just the more people I met, it was amazing that they didn't even bat an eyelid to me, because for me, this had been the biggest issue ever. Like, oh my God, I have this asymmetrical body. And so I would share this story, or they would see my body, and it was just who I was to them. They weren't have any preconceived notions or any negative responses. It's like, okay, that's who you are. Interesting. And it was weirdly deflating because it had been such a big deal to me. And so the fact that it wasn't a big deal to them was like, but this defined me for so long. I had so many personal issues because of this, and it's not a problem. And with time, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's just who I am. In fact, I remember looking at a tree once and the branch was all like twisted and withered looking. And often with wood products that we buy, like furniture, we embrace that sort of stuff. And I kind of made that metaphor for myself. I was like, oh yeah, my arm is thin and like twisted, and I'm just the interesting, unique branch. I got an interesting, unique branch on my body here, And so I learned to embrace it, accept it. And that's also why I started making clothes that are tailored to my body. So like my right arm is usually like 1.5 inches thinner than the left. I notice it. Most people don't even notice the difference, but I think because it's nicely tailored to fit, you're not seeing loose, flappy fabric on one side. It just fits on both sides, that it actually, I wouldn't say hides it, but better frames me, if you will.
It was really about your own comfort, right? Because you're talking about people don't notice, and for you like it to feel, you like to know that it's made for you and it fits better and feels better. Yeah,
I like a clean, slick profile.
Yeah, reasonable. I mean, there's something like, and I'm curious to dive into the Mennonite thing too, and I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but there's something so spiritual and like the ego stuff, and like learning that it's not about that, like turning something of like this story that you created, like that is ego, right? Like good or bad. Some people think of ego as like, I'm fucking the best, like I piss excellence. Like that's some people's definition of ego, but ego is really the story that you tell about yourself, the kind of facade that you create for the world. And for you, it seems like it was this story of someone who couldn't be seen, and you've created all these ideas of what people thought about your body.
It's interesting, the narratives that develop, because I look back at at myself from that time. And it was so much unnecessary pain. But it was unnecessary, and yet at the same time, it got me to where I am today. You know, it's a journey that you have to go through to get somewhere. And a journey worthwhile is rarely easy. And learning to embrace that journey is important, I think. It's a thing I say to myself every morning these days, just as I get up to get going for the day, embrace the journey. Because the only destination is 10 toes up, right? So, like if I've done it successfully, that's where I end up. And so, like, really it is about the process, you know? I find I set myself these goals, like, okay, I want to get to here and here and here. I can get frustrated. And it was the same thing at the time. I was like, I just need this. I just need to get a partner. So slowing down and embracing the journey. So I think about it being difficult at the time, but at the same time, it was necessary, and it was the journey.
Yeah. The hard part is often like it's those, it's the breakups. It's the shit that fucks you up, and that's when you learn. Because if it was easy the whole time, you'd go through this thing and you'd live and you'd die. You wouldn't learn shit. You wouldn't grow. You'd have a nice time for a chunk of time.
It's important. Yeah. I think it's important to be able to actively put yourself in that place as well, or not run away from it. Yeah. Put it in or don't run away from it. Look it in the eye, Yeah.
Is this all taught philosophy? Is this spirituality? Is this your Mennonite childhood?
This is an unlimited number of YouTube videos of people I admired who had successful careers, listening to their stories. Before podcasts were podcasts and they were called interviews, I remember people like Conan O'Brien was one of them. He's the first one that comes to mind, but there's a whole list of people that I admired for the careers they had. And interestingly, don't even watch his shows didn't watch his show very much, but found him fascinating being interviewed.
Yeah.
And so that's in large part and then just going through it, right? But hearing everyone's different stories and realizing that no two people are the same. And it's sort of this case of like, just keep going on whatever your journey is. And it tends to make sense in hindsight. And so a lot of listening, a lot of watching was the key. It was how I did it.
Yeah. And you still do it? Who's inspiring you right now?
I'll be honest, I don't listen to a lot or watch a lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I'm done. The journey continues on.
Healed. You're finished. You've grown.
Right? I think the challenges just change, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm on a sort of a different journey on I'm still growing personally, but I'm 37 this year. I'm going to be hitting 40 in a few years. And, I think I'm now at the point of I'm kind of looking at the bigger picture of life, where I fit in amongst my peers, my family, my friends. Where's my value that I'm offering there? And I think that's confronting the realities of theoretically kind of being halfway through this journey, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, I think, where I'm at. And so, yeah, I'm less input and more trying to understand what my output is and what the value is in my output, and should I be doing it, and how can I do it better, and where should I be putting my effort into, because I've got a few miles, but still got many to go, but not as many as I used to.
What is next for you as we're talking about the future and you're thinking about output versus achieving these goals you want to achieve?
Setting up my family so that they're okay if I end up going. Making sure they're all okay. Yeah.
How about that's fair? I mean, sobering and true and real and fair. I mean, you also though have this sort of community that you've built, are you are you going to continue on the path? Do you sort of have big plans to expand this into other stuff? Like, where do you want to take it?
Oh, I have empires in mind, visions
Sure.
of what I could do with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the big focus right now is just continuing to grow this audience. It's growing nicely. I'm in a good place. It's providing an income, which is fantastic. And so from here, I'm trying to, and I think this is every content creator says this, is but just trying to figure out how to build a business that isn't dependent on the platforms and the algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that group of people together. It's the expression, was it 9 Inch Nails guy who said that you need 5,000 fans, 5,000 dedicated fans to buy what you do, to have a comfortable living. And so and then I heard another version, which was find 1,000 people who are willing to give you $100 a year and you'll have enough to live off of, which I found was also an interesting thought. I was like, oh yeah, 1,000 people at $100, that gives you about 100,000, that's a good, that certainly keeps you comfortable. At least today it does.
Yeah.
But I want to grow different aspects of the business. So right now, the main thing is that I do courses. So I sell those. I get sponsorships, and then I do also get some Patreon support. I would like to continue to build out the courses to have a full library of content. So it basically becomes like a whole place where eventually, when it's big enough, I can make this a membership platform. So that way you essentially subscribe and you have access to any number of courses to create whatever you want. That's going to be a little labor intensive, and so I'm working away on that at the moment. And having a subscription feature also for me just creates a little bit more dependency in terms of income. Mm-hmm. And the other aspect of the business that I'm still figuring this part out, is sewing supplies. Because I've realized something that does really well content-wise is highlighting tools and how to use them, which of course is just like a natural pipeline to like, and here you can get it, right? And so the debate that I'm having with me right now is, do I partner with a company that has everything, so I just essentially refer it to them and they pay me a commission, or do I build out my own infrastructure? And then pie in the sky vision, I want a Netflix show.
No shit.
Yeah, I want a Netflix show. I think I could do a good job. I think I could make something entertaining and interesting and unique, because I really do enjoy the entertainment side of it. I mean, I loved doing the theater growing up, and that part of me hasn't disappeared. I did stand-up comedy in my 20s. I thought that was going to be a route. So the entertainment side has never gone. So I'm just waiting for Netflix to finally give me that show. Netflix, I'll take HBO as well,
Okay. Well, why don't you shoot a pilot? Like, what would your show, what's episode 1 of your show?
I have 2 shows in mind.
Okay. Are they secret? Like, we don't have to unpack it if you don't want to.
No.
Okay.
No, because it's content that I'm already doing. My first one is, let me take my YouTube content, what I'm doing there, and repackage it as a TV show. So essentially, I connect the clothes that you wear to how they're made. I get regular comments of people like, I don't even sew. I'm just fascinated by the way you share how it's done. I can understand it.
Yeah.
I'd like to think I have a way of being able to communicate information that makes it accessible to everyone. I intentionally don't use industry terms because they don't need to be used. If I can't explain it to someone who isn't in the business, then I can't explain it. I'm not doing a good job. So let me make the clothes that we wear interesting to everyday people. That's the first show idea. The second show is I want to do it with a show with my mom. I make these YouTube videos with my mom where we sew. But they're not even about sewing. They're about our banter. And people who end up watching those end up loving those videos. So that would be the more entertainment-based show, and the other one would be the more educational. But those are the 2 that I have in mind that I think would be
why can't you merge those into one show? Because to me, that feels like aspects of one really good show, because
It,
it,
it
like
very likely could be. Yeah.
yeah, like you're talking about the educational, then you cut to you and your mom, just some hilarious shit, then you cut back to the educational. I would watch that show for sure.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're doing like 23 minutes with
Yeah.
ads, I think that's actually a good idea. I like that.
Mix the peanut butter and the jelly. Because the dream is always like the Anthony Bourdain, you just get to live a life of adventure and film it and then tell people stories for sure. I would watch that. Yeah, dude, like shoot the pilot. We live in a time, per your point, where this thing, if you would have given this to Stanley Kubrick in the 60s, the shit he would have made, probably, or maybe he would have hated it. I don't know. But I mean, the ability to just create, and you're a talented, creative dude. Shoot the pilot. If nothing else, you got a kick-ass pilot. You put that on your YouTube.
You know what? That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I've been kicking around the idea of doing an episode on my own, just to film it.
You mentioned sort of the audience. I'm curious, like, what kind of enjoyment, or like what is the community aspect that you've learned from doing this show or this content that you create? Because it's all like it all lives in the comments section, right?
Yeah, I think the lesson that I learned is all the content I create is just advertising. As much as it's like educational and this and that, the stuff that's quote unquote what you think is the product is actually just advertising. It's the lost leader. And what I'm actually in is in the business of community building. And so I'm very active in the comments. Like I respond to every comment in the first 24 hours. Sometimes not necessarily, I won't necessarily write a response, but I'll at least give it like a heart like, so that to acknowledge that it's been read.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like none of this exists without the audience coming back every time to watch. And
Right.
so I engage with them, but also a big part is also just taking ownership of things when I get it wrong. Like there's been a few clips that I put out where it turns out I was doing it the wrong way, and people in the comments pointed out like, actually should be done X, Y, or Z way. And so then I do a follow-up video like, hey, so I got it wrong. Turns out here's how you do it. And then that video got more views than the original one did. And there's this sort of embracing of the embracing, because like the reality is no one's perfect, and I think we all know that.
Yeah.
And when you see someone acknowledge it instead of digging their heels in,
yeah,
it's relatable in a way, or endearing maybe is a better word. We're like, oh, okay, all right. Because often you'll find there's sort of a combativeness, and I find that the combativeness will often come from a place of low self-esteem, or a feeling of like you feel small because you're wrong, and so then like to defend the ego, as you're saying, you double down. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah.
Like a big lesson that I've learned is anger is actually just protection for fear.
Totally.
And so being able to take a moment, I still get the same reaction. Like the feelings are, but don't respond.
Yeah.
Chill.
Yeah.
Let that defense mechanism calm down.
But there's so much like courage I think it takes, and people don't think about that. You're just scrolling and you're seeing people putting themselves out there, but especially someone with like empathy, and like probably who comes from a good place. Because some people are just putting shit out there, they don't care. You're dancing, it's whatever. But I think other people who are a little more conscious of just everything, and then creating something and putting yourself out there, I think takes a lot of courage.
In a similar sort of vein, early on, I responded to some of the negative comments. Like it wasn't about something I'd done wrong, just like hurtful, mean comments. But I responded in a sort of positive manner. Like I essentially to the effect of, I hear you, you are heard. And it's amazing how the follow-up comments will just be like, hey man, I actually like what you're doing. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, da, 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 this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
And then often you visit their page, and it's also like they'll have very inspirational quotes on their page and stuff. And I realize that it's so often, it's at least from my experience, and other people's mileage may vary, but it's always just hurt people who are propagating more hurt.
Yeah.
I don't have time to do this anymore. My audience has got big enough where like it's not useful of my time to be paying attention to these things. But when I was doing it initially, it's like, sorry about that.
You're cool.
Yeah, it was just hurt people who are hurt and don't know how to process those emotions and feelings and put them out there.
Yeah, I mean, we're all hurt and scared,
Aren't we?
You wake up in this meat suit and you get this program installed in you when you're a baby. And then you're sent out into the world, and one day you figure out you're going to die. And then we're all just sort of like trying our best,
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially in a scary world.
And the screen in between us sort of disconnects that humanity a little bit because it's just a person on a screen.
Yeah.
And I don't say that necessarily. It's unfortunate that it's how it works, but it's also amazing technology, right? But it's that film in between, if you will, that allows for the expression of these comments.
Yeah.
But after doing that a handful of times, it gave me a good understanding. It's like, okay, all right. Well, when I read, I'm like, I feel bad for you, man. Whatever happened, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry that happened. Whatever happened to you, I'm sorry. I can't fix you. You're going to have to do that work on your own.
Right.
I wish you all the best.
Yeah. For
do
real.
it a few more times, and I'll probably have to block you just because it's negativity in my comments, but I wish you all the best.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing you've gotten to that place, like especially there's the shit show of toxicity that the internet can be, but it's so true. Like I think people are just, when they're shouting at you, they're shouting at themselves, their wounded inner child.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so apparent, I think, especially to anyone who's done like the inner work, it's so apparent. But if you don't, you can't see it. You just see a bunch of angry people.
It's a protection mechanism from my perspective. In the same way, like an animal that is scared or afraid barks and yells and is very loud because they're actually just trying to protect themselves with the hope that it will scare you off. I think we do the same thing as humans through the form of anger and yelling and these sorts of things. It protects that little child inside of us that we still are connected to, that's afraid of the world, unsure, isn't quite, feel like they have their footing, feel less than, those feelings. Yeah.
Is there anything about your sort of past childhood learnings in building this empire, future empire, opportunities, like any key takeaways, like biggest lessons learned that you could share?
Yeah. Oh, I could do hours on this, but the
the
biggest thing I would say is it doesn't matter, in the sense that even when you quote unquote get there, you're still the same person that you are. And so focus on being the best version of yourself, and all the other stuff is going to work out. That's the thing I tell myself as well. I go through a little mantra every morning just to kind of remind myself. And it's things like that. It's like, because this was all I ever wanted, was to somehow be an entertainer or have an audience. And it's where I wanted to go in life. And when it finally happened for me is when it least mattered. In that now my priority is my family and taking care of them and friends and those sorts of things. And those are the most important things to me. But growing up, this is what I wanted, and I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. And how do I get there? I was obsessed with it. And candidly, I'm still obsessed with it, but I think about it most of the time. But yet true value.
Yeah.
In here, it's weird. It's been a weird journey. And so my advice would be, don't lose yourself, I guess. Focus on being the best version of yourself, and everything else will happen. Just stay disciplined. All the other stuff everyone always says, stay focused, stay disciplined, work hard. it's a combination of luck and being regular being there, being ready for when luck shows up is I think how I would put it. Because every bit, like there's nothing, I didn't choose to be born at this time, and I was, because this was when technology happened. I couldn't have chose that.
Sure.
I couldn't have chose that my parents ended up moving to Canada and I was raised here and had opportunities, like all these sorts of things. So little of it has been under my control. The only thing I have been able to control is just to stay focused, continue at it, keep getting better at it. And mainly I try to get better for myself. Like I'm constantly trying to make it look a little better, describe things a little better. How can I just inject a little more humor into it? Like, what's the key to getting the hook to get people in? Like, I'm obsessed about these little nuances, but the key is to make sure I get everything else in life right. I got to go to bed on time. When the alarm clock goes off in the morning, get up, have breakfast, say my mantras, do my shower, get to work, make sure I eat my 3 square meals a day, drink my water, to do my exercise. It's life. Getting life right is what allows me to get everything else right. The work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although it sounds really difficult and a lot of work. But I guess that's it.
Because it's easy to be like, oh shoot, I got to get this done and this done and this done.
Yeah.
But this meat suit is the only thing that can do the work. So if the meat suit ain't in a great shape, then the work ain't getting done. So like, just gotta log off. Give the meat suit what it needs. Back to it. And it somehow mysteriously always just ends up getting done.
You said you could mention advice for several hours. Were there any other tidbits?
Yeah, and really lean into yourself in terms of style. Copy at first. Just copy what you like verbatim when you're initially getting started, because there's going to be things that inspire you. Copy it. But the good thing is you can never perfectly copy something because you're not that person and you haven't had their experiences. But then slowly over time, you're going to find yourself evolving into your own style. I find with the creative endeavors, there's often this idea that you have to be unique and interesting. And you can only be unique and interesting after having been or experienced what is at the moment. And there's going to be things that you like, especially when you're young. You're kind of playing with ideas. It's like with fashion, you're trying on different looks. Like, does this work for me? Do I feel good in this? You're taking what's out there. And that's been defined by people who've already had all kinds of life experiences and created this style. So you're just copying what exists. So copy. There's no shame in it. Copy. You also don't have an audience. So it's not like anyone sees it. Worst case scenario, you get an audience straight out of the gate. That's the worst thing that can happen. Because then you get locked in.
Yeah.
And you might not be able to evolve out of that. And that is unfortunate. I was for the longest time, I didn't have any audience. And it was like, oh, what do I got to do? And I was like, okay, I see this person doing that. I got to do that. Oh, that person's doing that. But it was good because it just allowed me to play with styles, try on different content outfits, if you will, see what felt natural, see what didn't feel natural. And that just slowly evolved until where I am now. You work with what you got. That's the biggest thing. You don't need to go buy a bunch of stuff. It's not a big production. Just do a thing. The hardest thing is getting started. Just do a thing.
Yeah.
Because that first thing that you did will inform the next thing you do. And then that one informs the one after that, and build and grow. Like you can spend an unlimited amount of money getting all the kind of stuff and planning, and eventually you just got to start. So I say I had an iPhone with a plug-in mic that I bought, like a plug-in to when headphone jacks were still a thing.
Yeah.
And so I had to always be within like range of that 6-foot cable, so that way I wasn't knocking over. Like it was like real bare bones. That's what I had. I spent $20 on that mic and I got going.
Yeah. You got to start somewhere.
Just go. Just do it.
It's such an interesting phenomenon though, because at the same time, like you've got a large following, 1 million people are watching a video. And then do you feel like famous? And then when you walk down the street, do people know you? Like, are you in situations ever? Because it's like, there's like what we were raised on as famous: George Clooney, Brad Pitt, right? You're a
Hmm.
star. And then now there's sort of this new version of fame, which I think you've attained. And how does that translate from the internet to real life?
Well, I'm lucky in that I live in a relatively smaller town in Canada, and the predominance of my audience is in the US. I've had probably 4 or 5 people recognize me,
Mm,
and it feels nice. It feels nice. It's like, oh, thank you. But the weird thing is, I have a relationship with my lens because I'm always looking down the barrel of that lens. That's,
right. Yeah.
it's like, that Pink Floyd album with the light and it comes, yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm like that's my prism into this experience, and
Yeah.
so and I have a little studio downstairs where I have my backdrop set up, and so it's this really intimate experience in my basement. And so it feels, in fact, even someone watching me film is completely throws me off because I'm having this intimate experience with the lens. And when someone's watching me, I just can't be natural.
Yeah.
On stage, it's fantastic to have people watch you. Do it to a lens, and it just explodes, for me at least, the
Yeah.
experience. Because like now I'm performing to the lens here, but I'm pretending like I'm not aware of you here
Right.
watching me do this thing. And
Yeah.
it's really so in like I have an audience, but I don't consider myself famous,
Yeah.
right? Like Zuckerberg can shut down my feed tomorrow and it's all over. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
It's fair. Yeah. I
And
feel that too. Like if someone were standing right here, I wouldn't be able to pay attention. I'd be
yeah.
thinking of the things I was saying while I was saying them, aware of how they were perceiving it and how I was perceived by you, perceiving them, perceiving you, perceiving me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gets real dicey real quick.
Yeah.
So I feel lucky that I don't have a. I'm not famous in the George Clooney sense.
Mm.
It it's what I wanted growing up. I thought, young Cornelius thought being famous is what would fulfill that hole in my heart. And luckily it didn't happen like when I was young again. That's why I say the worst thing can happen is if you get famous young or quickly, because it
Mhm.
doesn't give you a chance to figure this thing out. So for me, I have an audience. That's what I say. I have an audience, and I'm thankful for that.
Cornelius, you're a good man. I appreciate you. And thanks for doing this. This
Well,
has been really good.
thank you as well. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I mean, if you ever want to, I'm open to another one. But thank you very much for this one opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed it.